Hello ladies and gentlemen, Sigval the Grim here, and today we are going to be going over an artifact tier list and also a guide, because while I will rank them from the worst to the best, beginning with D rank being the worst and S rank being the best, I will also talk about what each artifact does in the meantime, so it can have at the same time an explanatory purpose and a ranking purpose for all the artifacts. If you're new to this channel, I do those kinds of things where I try to explain the game for a lot of people to better understand. So if you're new to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe to not miss out on future content. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. And like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, and let's get into the video. Okay, so starting off from the bottom, in the D tier we are going to have the Tech artifact. And also the Agility artifact and the Metahuman artifact. We will go over each one of them and explain why they are here. First of all, the Tech artifact is going to give at level 10 plus 55% health and plus 56% attack against might heroes only for the Tech heroes. The Tech specific part does not really count, because first of all it needs to be equipped on the Tech character, and secondly you need to face a Might character, so that is extremely specific to really take into consideration. The part that we will take into consideration is going to be the health, and this artifact is going to give you a bunch of health. This makes it a defensive artifact, and it has scored so low on this list because first of all, the artifacts in general tend to be better if they are offensive oriented, as you will see further in this list, and secondly because of the fact that even if it's a tanky artifact, there are two or three, actually three other artifacts on this list that simply do that job much better than giving 55% chance health. So the Tech artifact is a pretty bad artifact. If it's going to be your first artifact or you don't still have 3 artifacts in total, then you can equip it on someone. It's not going to do anything bad, but it's not going to be good, especially in the long run, and it's an artifact that you should never upgrade. Secondly, we're going to take a look at the Agility artifact. The Agility artifact is an artifact that will give you at level 10 plus 100% dot damage. And for the Agility characters, it will give some attack against the metahuman heroes. Again, we will not take into consideration the Agility specific part because it is too specific to take into consideration. And yeah, I know on paper plus 100% dot damage is going to sound amazing. Imagine what Heartbreaker, Harlequin and Leslie the Joker are going to do with it. No, they're not going to do anything with it because dot damage in this game does kill with attack. If dot damage was not increased by attack for those specific characters that are going to be kind of needs to you increase dot damage, if their dot damage would not be increased by attack, then this would be an amazing artifact. But the problem is that the dot damage in this game in almost all the scenarios, if not all scenarios, is going to be increased by the attack of the character. And because it is going to be increased by the attack of the character, if you want to increase the dot damage on a character, you are going to have much better alternatives than this one that not only will increase the dot damage by increasing the attack, but will increase the overall performance of the character by increasing the attack. So there are much better artifacts, and this has scored very low because dot damage in most scenarios, if not all scenarios, is going to scale with attack. And when it comes to attack, first of all, attack buffs everything, not only dot damage, and secondly there are much better artifacts just in terms of buffing dot damage further on this list, because they give attack, and as I have said, the dot damage scales with attack. And the last artifact on this tier is going to be the Amulet of Metahuman. The Amulet of Metahuman is going to increase the healing effects by 100% for yourself and by 50% for the teammates. And it's going to give a 56 attack bonus to the metahuman characters against the Tech heroes. Again, we will not take into consideration the second passive because of the fact that it's going to be very specific. And yet again, the first passive is going to be pretty decent on paper. But when it comes to healing effects on this game, most of the healing effects, like 90% or above 90%, or maybe even all the healing effects in this game, yet again do scale with attack. And if the healing effects will scale with attack, it means that you are going to have much better options to buff your healing effects, and while buffing your healing effects, you will also buff your offensive abilities. If you want your character to be damage oriented, if you want your character to be like tank oriented, then rather than increasing his healing, you are going to make him more tanky so he doesn't need to actually heal that much. So either way, you unfortunately have much better options in this game. The only role of this artifact is going to be, might be like being equipped on a third team member that's not going to see fight in order to passively buff the other teammates, but I haven't really found any need to do that because most of the characters that have heals have huge heals that simply don't need buffing because they simply fill up all their HP bar. So overall this is a pretty terrible artifact. Even more terrible than the tech artifact, but not terrible enough to make an even lower separate tier list, because of the fact that it's simply a very niche role that is already covered in a better way by other things. And this was everything for the D tier. Now we will move into C tier. Everything that is D tier, if you have 3 artifacts that are above D tier, then break anything that is in D tier. Now moving up to the C tier. In C tier we are going to have 2 artifacts that have similar purposes but on other sides of the spectrum. We're going to have the Arcane Artifact and the Might Artifact. So first of all, let's look at the Arcane Artifact. So the Arcane Artifact, other than granting plus 56 attack to against arcane heroes for arcane characters, which yet again is going to be a very specific role that we will not take into consideration, is going to grant plus 55% special attack damage. And that is going to basically buff the damage that you deal while using your special attacks, and this is decent. This is going to have a decent role if you get him at level 1 and you can use him for a while and you keep it on a character in order to buff your damage. But the problem is the following. The special attack damage is going to scale with the character's attack. And as you will see further on this list, we have artifacts that are going to increase the attack. And by increasing the attack, you will not only increase the special damage, but you will also increase the damage you deal by basic attacks. And on the other hand, there will be much higher increasing values than the 55%. So overall, this is a decent character to use, the decent artifact to use until you get better artifacts, but overall is not an artifact worth upgrading. And moving to the other artifact, which is going to be the Amulet of Might. The Amulet of Might is going to grant increased attack damage by 65% at level 10 on basic attacks, tag attacks and swipe attacks, and yet again the very niche role of giving plus 56% attack against agility heroes that we will not take into considerations because it is a very specific scenario. So overall this is going to buff your characters with 56% on their damage on basic attacks. Yet again a pretty good artifact, but the problem is that there are much better artifacts out there that buff attack that we will talk about further in this video. And by buffing the basic attacks, it also misses the part that Arcane Artifact covers, which is buffing the special attacks. So while using this you will increase your damage on basic attacks, but you will not increase your damage on special attacks, and the artifacts that we'll talk about later on this list will also increase the attack, and that also increases the damage that you will do with your skills. So overall this artifact would be pretty good if there were not so much better artifacts at the top. Like this and the Arcane Artifact scored so low simply because of the fact that they are a much worse variant of the best artifact that is out there, and we will get into later. So those 2 artifacts are 2 artifacts that you can definitely use if you don't have already 3 artifacts that are above C tier. Like if you don't have any artifacts above C tier, definitely use those 2. They will perform pretty decently for you, but don't waste your resources on them. This was all for the D tier, and now for the C tier, and now let's move to the B tier. In the B tier, we're going to have two artifacts. Those two, keep in mind that while I rank these artifacts, I kept in mind the raids and the arena, and those two artifacts are going to be more arena and champions arena oriented, though I'm going to do my best to be as fair as possible towards them, but I'm going to explain why they only made it all the way to the B tier. First of all, we will have Kryptonian Regeneration Matrix, and secondly, we'll talk about the anti-H metal armor. First of all, let's talk about the Kryptonian Regeneration Matrix. So this thing is going to revive one of your teammates once per battle with 74% health. And if it's a Superman character, it will gain a plus 100% attack for the rest of the fight. So, most of the Superman characters are going to be built so they are very tanky. And because they are built so they are very tanky, they are less likely to die. So you are not likely to trigger the second passive of this artifact, and if you were to want to specifically trigger this second passive, there are much better ways to get additional attack, and we will talk later about that in the game, in the video. But overall, the second passive is not going to be very useful. The revive thing once per battle is going to be amazing in Champions Arena and decent in Arena, but there's a little bit of a problem with that. If you're going to put this on a damage dealer, then he will deal less damage than if he was going to have a damage oriented artifact, and when he revives with 74% health, he might get just as easily knocked out. So there will be an artifact further up on this list that is going to protect damage dealers better if that's your purpose, and at the same time there will be the same artifact who's going to work much better for tanks, because tanks are very likely to take damage during a fight, but will take a lot of time to die, and you are not guaranteed to get the value from this one, as an artifact that will be higher up on this list, who's a better variant of this in my opinion, will be guaranteed to be useful to you in any specific situation of the fight. But overall, it's a pretty good artifact, a great artifact for Champions Arena. This is not an artifact that I suggest breaking, an artifact that I suggest keeping, but don't rush upgrading it since there are much better options out there. And the second artifact is going to be a very interesting artifact, the anti-H metal armor. This is going to give you additional health, to be exact 75%. It's going to give you 0.6% attack for each percentage of health you are missing, and it's going to have a special passive for the legendary characters, giving them plus 42% of the damage dealt being dealt to the whole enemy team, split upon all their teammates. Basically, it's going to give you a little bit less impactful raid and special tree part on all your special attacks. So overall, if you equip this on a legendary character, this is easily S tier, maybe even better than definitely better than the top artifact of this list in terms of Arena and Champions Arena. But the problem is not everybody is going to have legendary characters, and since you can equip your artifacts on multiple teams, and there are simply not that many legendary characters in that game, in terms of the passive that is going to split damage among the enemy teammates, it is going to be a little bit limited on the number of characters that you're going to be able to take advantage of that. And that passive is going to be totally useless in raids. Next up is going to be the additional attack for every percentage of health lost. I'm not a fan of that, to be honest, because in order to get the most out of this, you would need to get as low on health as possible, and this is going to give you additional health. So the attack that you're going to gain is going to be depending on how much damage you take, and this is not an artifact that is not going to let you take that much damage. And the health that you're going to receive is going to be amazingly big, no problems with that. That will be great for Arena and Champions Arena, not so good for raids. And the thing is, this is overall a pretty solid item for a tank. It's going to be an amazing item for a legendary character. If you put this on a legendary character, this turns into the best artifact for Arena and Champions Arena in the entire game. But if you put it on any other character, it's just a little bit of an above average tank artifact. Overall, an artifact that you should definitely keep if you get, but yet again, don't rush upgrading it. This was everything for the B tier. Now let's move on to the A tier. Now moving on into the A tier, we will have two artifacts. We will have Claws of Horus and the Cosmic Staff. First of all, we're going to talk about Claws of Horus. Claws of Horus is going to give you at level 10 75% increased attack and 30% chance to stun your opponents on swipe attacks and jump attacks. So, first of all, the second passive, the 30% chance to stun your opponents on swipe attacks and jump attacks, is not going to be applied in raids. So that is going to have zero value in terms of raids. In terms of arena, it's going to work for you sometimes, but you are not going to swipe attack that often or jump attack that often. You're going to do it at the end of every combo, but you will not get that many chances. But with all that being said, you will going to get some very nice stuns in the arena if you have it at level 10, and that has some value to take into consideration. And the attack part, this is going to be great because it gives you additional attack. The fact that it gives you additional attack, unlike the artifact that we talked about previously, the Amulet of Arcane and the Amulet of Might, will both boost your special attacks and your normal attacks because it is attack and the scale of attack. And it will also boost your healings because we talked about the metahuman artifact earlier in the game. So basically this is one of the simplest artifacts in the game and one of the best artifacts in the game because it's going to give you basically a big chunk of attack and some chance to stun in the arena and Champions Arena. In terms of raids, this artifact's applications are a little limited because of the fact that in most scenarios you are going to be better off in terms of damage with an artifact that will be present in the S tier in this list. But with all that being said, it is going to be a great artifact and pretty much the only artifact you can use on a damage dealer while fighting in raids Horrific Scarecrow, because you will not be able to use that artifact, but we'll get into that later. So it has a pretty good application in terms of raids with a niche but much needed role. It has a pretty good application in the arena, and there are characters that would rather have this as their best damage artifacts because some characters prefer a playstyle where they don't tag in and out a lot and they stay in the fight, but those are few characters. But even though it's a pretty solid artifact and an artifact that you should definitely invest into as long as you don't have the S tier artifact that we will talk about later. The other artifact on the A tier is going to be the Cosmic Staff. The Cosmic Staff is going to be an artifact that whenever you take damage greater than 10% of your max health, you are going to receive, if you have it at level 10, a shield that blocks 70% of all incoming damage, and at the same time while it is active you are going to reflect a big chunk of that damage, 57% to be more exact, when you are going to be hit with special attacks only. So this is going to be the best item in the game in terms of making a character tanky, because of the fact that first of all it is going to be an item that will block damage and will reduce the damage incoming. It's not going to be a shield that is going to be a percentage of your health, so that means that 77% of the damage will be blocked for both tank characters and for both damage dealer characters. Even though this is a little bit harder to trigger on damage deal on tanks, it is going to be triggered because there are a lot of armor piercing abilities in the game, and this will mitigate the damage you take for a pretty solid amount of time, and at the same time will reflect a pretty big chunk of damage towards the enemy. So this is hands down, in my opinion, the best artifact to have for tanks in the entire game. You can use it in the arena, you can use it in raids to put on your combo builders, and at the same time you can use this in the arena and Champions Arena on your damage dealers if you are unsure of their survivability and you think they have enough damage without another damage oriented artifact. Because yet again, this is going to be decreasing a percentage of the damage incoming, is not going to be based on any of the character that is wielding stats in terms of his tankiness. So this is going to be effective both for tanks and for characters that are going to die much easier. In terms of raids, you don't really want to use this on your damage dealer because of the fact that he will need to deal as much damage as possible, because we're talking about raids over here, but most of the times you can stick this on your combo builder. So overall, a pretty solid artifact. I wouldn't really focus on this if I have Claws of Horus or the artifact in the S tier that we're going to talk about, because I prefer to first go for damage. But once you have built a damage artifact or both of the damage artifact, then this is most definitely the third best choice to build. And this was basically everything for the A tier. Now let's get into the S tier. In the S tier, we are going to have only one artifact, the only artifact left that we have not talked about, and it's going to be the All-Blades. And the All-Blades is going to be the best artifact in the entire game for very many reasons. So first of all, you are going to gain a 150% attack on tag in for 30 seconds and inflict a percentage of dot damage to yourself. Let's talk about that later. Let's take a look at the other passive. If it is equipped on Red Hood, it will give him a 50% lethal attack chance if it's level 10, of course, and will reduce the cost of the super move by 5. Red Hood is not the best character in the entire game, and he doesn't really have a role other than increasing the duration of the fight for Multiverse team when fighting Captain Cold. So you can equip another spare the All-Blades on Red Hood, if you have two of them, of course, because one will be needed to be equipped on the damage dealer, and that way you can cast his super move for much cheaper and reduce and increase the duration of the fight for much cheaper. So that's one application, and that is the only application where we will talk about the second passive. But the first passive is going to be giving you a huge increase of attack, and we can see that it's going to give you double the amount that Claws of Horus is going to give, and only if tagging in once, because the effect of 30 seconds that you are going to get is going to stay for 30 seconds even if you trigger it another time. So you can stack buffs upon buffs of the All-Blades because they all got their separate cooldowns. So you can get to 3 the All-Blades stacks, and sometimes to 4, though they don't last a very long time while being 4. You might not even get to do that, but most of the time you are going to have 3 the All-Blades buffs active at the same time, and that means in total that the attack of your character will be increased by 450%. Though keep in mind that when we are talking about artifacts, they buff the base values of things when they buff attack. So it's not going to be like 150% per stack from your entire attack, because that will lead to some damage that is out of this world. Will be 150% of the base attack that the character has. But that is still a very good value and a very good artifact in terms of damage. The downside is the thing that you are going to get a debuff that is going to drain 20% of your health as dot damage over time. But in terms of rates, most of the times, especially in the tier 7 and tier 8, if your damage dealer is going to screw up and get hit by the enemy, it's most likely dead. So you need it almost perfect gameplay before you are going to need it even more while using the All-Blades. But considering how much attack you're going to receive by only having this artifact equipped, it is definitely worth using. It can be used against every single boss in the raids, even phase 2. Because of the All-Blades being introduced, there has been a new strategy fighting phase 2 developed, where you have Shazam and King of the Aquaman, and you keep both of them alive in order to keep tagging in and out Aquaman in order to stack the All-Blades buff. So this is going to be performing in raids amazing in every stage of the raids except for Horrific Scarecrow. Over there you can't rely on it, and in the arena it's going to be performing amazing for you, but in the arena you can make the choice for Claws of Horus instead, or for Cosmic Staff instead on a damage dealer to keep him alive. But in raids it will be 100% your go-to artifact and will perform amazingly for you also in the arena and Champions Arena in terms of your damage boosting needs. This is simply the best artifact in the entire game. It's a must-have artifact for every single player in the game, so if you get it, make sure you prioritize it, make sure you put all your artifact upgrade materials into it, because it's going to be the best artifact in the entire game in terms of dealing damage, and that little debuff of draining health is most definitely worth, and will drive you towards having much better gameplay. So this is it for the S tier, and this was the tier list with all the artifacts. Keep in mind that this is my personal opinion, you might have a different opinion, so if you have a different opinion, most definitely let me know down in the comments. And at the same time, keep in mind that while making this list, I kept in mind what was used in all the game modes, like in Raids, in Arena and Champions Arena. What I didn't really pay attention to was the defensive teams in Champions Arena, and those might have gotten maybe a rank higher, the anti-armor or the Kryptonian Matrix. But other than that, I think this is a pretty fair list to make, and at the end of the day, again, it's just my honest opinion, but if you have a different opinion, let me know down in the comments, but I simply don't think there is a better artifact than the All Blades. So with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. For any questions, feel free to ask them down in the comments. As you might have seen lately, I am not uploading 2 videos a day anymore because I'm going to have my exams real soon. I'm a law student and I need to learn for that. I'll do my best to upload a video every day still, but we will take it a little bit easier until I'm finished with my exams, and after that I will open finally the Discord server, I'll finally start live streaming, and I'll focus solely on YouTube, but I need to take it a little bit easier until I get over my exams, and I might answer your comments a little bit later, but I'll make sure to answer them all still. So thank you very much for watching, thank you very much for support, like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.